Stacy and Ella.
Stacy, you come up with a very interesting and also wonderful experience. So can you first share with us how did your experience lead you to Johnson & Johnson Innovation Center?
Great. Well, let me first thank you for that kind introduction and thank the organizers for inviting me to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak with you about corporate innovation and best practices and success. These saw a number of clients that were quite interesting to me and joined a company in the diagnostic space right around the time that the Human Genome Project was being completed. So there's really no other company other than J&J as a leading global healthcare company that plays across the entire healthcare spectrum from pharmaceuticals, medical device, health and wellness, and consumer health, where I can put all of those skills to work. And so, as you said in the introduction, I'm part of the JJDC investment team. I lead our investment activities in consumer health, and happy to share more about what we're doing at Johnson & Johnson Innovation.
Thank you, Stacy, for sharing your personal journey, and also hope that will be also beneficial for many of our audience members, also coming from a very interesting and also unique background. So now that we mentioned about talking about Johnson & Johnson, so can you also introduce us about what does Johnson & Johnson Innovation Center do, and also what is your activity?
Sure. So Johnson & Johnson Innovation is an enterprise-wide platform, and it's really a comprehensive external innovation platform at the global level, but with very local focus on creating the key networks and bringing together the resources and the ideas and the capital to create innovation ecosystems. And so we have embedded ourselves in key hotbed innovation markets: London, Boston, Shanghai, and here in the Bay Area. And we think really the recipe for success in choosing those markets and setting up infrastructure and operations is kind of three-pronged. The first is top-tier academic centers where science and innovation and technology really emerge out of the research work that's done there. A very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem of entrepreneurs who are willing to take the risk and translate those innovations and those discoveries into companies. And then the capital networks, the venture capital investors and private equity investors to fuel and accelerate the commercialization of those technologies. So we have a global ecosystem. I think another important hallmark of the platform that we call Johnson & Johnson Innovation is that it's a flexible model that brings the right structure, the right partnerships to the right partner. And so we have a number of tools in the toolbox, as we often say, that give us this flexibility. The first is a network of business incubators called J-Labs. Some of you who are local to the Bay Area have probably heard of J-Labs. And this is our business incubation platform. We have 13 J-Labs across 3 continents and are opening Shanghai actually at the end of next month. And these are state-of-the-art wet biology labs, prototyping labs for medical device companies, and all of the conference rooms and office space. So what we're really trying to do there is take all of the back office considerations of what it means to be in a startup and allow early stage entrepreneurs to focus on the value creation of what they're building. And so that's a model where there's no strings attached. We don't take equity in those companies. We are developing organic relationships with the companies. We provide informal mentoring, and it's our hope that we will develop relationships at the right time with the right structure. So JLabs is an important early stage vehicle for engaging with the external world, and that really extends across medical device, pharmaceuticals, and consumer. The next tool in the toolbox is what we call our innovation centers, and this is a team across a number of functions, all of the expertise you would need to do business development transactions, R&D collaborations. So we have lawyers and business development executives, finance, as well as all of the subject matter expertise, the scientists, the technologists associated with bringing together a partnership across farm, med device, and consumer. And there we have teams in the 4 innovation hubs that I mentioned, London, Boston, Shanghai, and then people embedded throughout the world looking for new opportunities and bringing them into these innovation centers. And they're really intended to be centers where entrepreneurs, such as many of you in the audience, can come in and understand how best to navigate the large organization that is J&J. So the best opportunity to find your way through J&J is to find the right person at one of our innovation centers. And the final tool in the toolbox across Johnson & Johnson Innovation is JJDC, which I mentioned. I'm a part of that team. This is the strategic venture arm of J&J. We've been investing for 45 years. We were the first corporate healthcare investor to join the venture investing community back in the early 70s when venture investing really was institutionalized and kicked off. We've been investing across farm and med device for far longer than consumer. The portfolio that I've been building over the last couple of years is relatively nascent, about 5 or 6 years old. Last year we deployed about $450 million across 40 investments, and we are, as I mentioned, a strategic investor where we're looking to create growth options across farm, med device, and consumer. So if you really put that all together, what we have is a comprehensive model for developing the relationships, putting together the resources, and co-creating innovations, new solutions, new opportunities to have an impact across Johnson & Johnson and to help entrepreneurs and startups realize the scale and the mission that they have to bring their ideas to market.
The scale of the innovation center also means a lot for the healthcare startup companies also. And you mentioned you have a 13 JLabs innovation center in the global wise. In China, you also have one in Shanghai. So we also want to consider the next one to in Beijing. So anyway, you have enriched experience in relationship building between the large corporate and the small startup. So can you share with us of any successful stories of relationship building of Johnson & Johnson with startup companies?
Sure, absolutely. So I think the first thing to recognize is that across all of the different vehicles, whether it's JLabs, whether it's our innovation centers and the early stage partnerships to de-risk science and technology, or the equity investments that we make, are not measured in terms of the numbers of transactions that we do, the number of deals. It's really about the impact of these deals downstream across our business partners in our pharmaceutical, medical device, and consumer business. So we are full stop trying to impact the J&J portfolio and ultimately impact patients and consumers. So it's not about the number of deals, but really the onboardings and the impact that we have. I'll point to a couple of what I'll call success stories, and there's countless others that we probably don't have enough time to talk about. One of the very first investments that we made relatively recently in our consumer portfolio was with a company based on the East Coast that was looking at what technologies happen in the professional skincare world that could be deployed and brought to market in more of a consumer-facing setting. And so they were developing a phototherapy device for treating acne and anti-aging for the consumer. And we ended up making quite a sizable investment in the company and worked together with the entrepreneur to define the clinical trials and the regulatory path to really get to those hurdles and the key milestones that would drive the human efficacy and safety that J&J would need to think about bringing such a product to market. And so we made that equity investment. We saw the milestones were achieved, and we ended up acquiring the company and launching the acne light therapy device under the Neutrogena brand a couple of years ago, which was one of the more successful launches that Neutrogena had. So I think this is a really important example of seeing technologies converging into the consumer market and using capital, using resources, and bringing a product to market through that equity collaboration, and leveraging the J&J marketing and scale to get it to market. More recently, our medical device sector, and specifically our Ethicon business, has put a number of stakes in the ground about being a leader in robotic surgery and in digital surgery. And a few months ago, we announced the intent to acquire Auris Health, which is one of the leaders in digital surgery. This was preceded by an equity investment by my colleague Renee Ryan on our JGDC investment team. And I think, again, points to how we bring the right tools, the right resources to a relationship, and then translate it into impact into J&J. So that relationship hasn't yet closed yet, but we are looking forward to working with the Auris Health team to complete that transaction.
Well, this is quite a fascinating story. So a follow-up question to that is what is the largest challenge you ever faced regarding the relationship building between the large corporate and the small startups?
Yeah, I'd love to have the time to ask all of you in the audience, because you probably have perspectives as well. So I'll highlight what I think are three challenges. One is, I think, just the cadence and the pace of working with a large company. Obviously, if you're a startup, you're working very nimbly, you're able to make decisions very quickly. Large companies have processes and governance and strategic plans, and so making decisions and executing on those decisions can sometimes be a challenge. And I think one of the things that really inspired Johnson & Johnson Innovation to be created by our leadership, and specifically under the leadership of Paul Stoffels, who's our Chief Science Officer, was to bring resources together and be much more nimble and to be able to move much more quickly around partnerships and executing on innovation strategies. The second thing I'll mention is a challenge in terms of just differences in terms of the tolerance for risk. So entrepreneurs, again, by definition, you all are able to put together resources and take risk and move much more quickly. I think large companies, in parts of J&J, to be clear, have different appetites for risk, and they work on business models that have been proven for many years, decades. In J&J's case, 130 years. And so taking on risk in doing things in a different way just takes time. And we've demonstrated the ability to do that, and we'll continue to do that throughout different aspects of our business. And then the final thing is just a different lexicon. I think some of the challenges just come in terms of being able to translate these two worlds, and I sometimes describe myself as a translator for entrepreneurs and startups of how to work with large companies and how to navigate through those organizations and setting expectations of what it's going to look like and what to expect. And then correspondingly, I often feel like a translator with my colleagues in corporate or from our business partners, our consumer leadership, to understand what the entrepreneurial world looks like, what the startup world looks like. And just as an example, someone interrupted me the other day as I was talking and asked me what an MVP was. Well, we all in the startup world know what an MVP is. It's not Steph Curry. It's a minimum viable product. And, it's just a different language. It's a different lexicon that I feel like our colleagues really have to kind of absorb. So those are some of the key challenges.
So those are all very valuable insights. So from your observation and also perspective, so how does Johnson & Johnson's innovative relationship contract or compare with other large corporations?
Yeah. Well, I think I spoke to some of that in really highlighting that we have an end-to-end platform that brings a number of different tools to bear in driving the right relationship with the right partner and having a flexible model to structure around not only things that are strategically relevant to J&J, but that are meaningful and that will move the needle for entrepreneurs. And I think we're seeing an unprecedented amount of corporate VCs emerge, and if that's the one tool that they're using to access innovation, I see it as a limitation, and having a full range of options, whether it's partnering in business development, whether it's incubating companies and having a view into how emerging technologies are coming through an incubator, or making equity investments. I think having that flexible model with a number of different tools is an advantage. I think one of the other differences, and again, I can speak more to J&J, is we tend to focus our innovation efforts around impactful product and asset-based solutions, or in platforms that are bringing new technologies to market that will yield new products or new solutions. And that's a little bit different than other large companies that are innovating either through equity or through partnerships, where they're focused on bringing in capabilities, creating efficiencies in the business and bringing in capabilities. We certainly are interested in those types of relationships, but I think, for example, we'd be less likely to use equity to access those types of relationships.
Those are quite interesting points, and also insightful opinions, especially coming from an insider's perspective. So now, many of our audience coming with entrepreneur background that probably hope to hear some advice for the corporate investment and also relationship building with corporations. So, well, this topic can last a whole day long, and we don't really have much time left. But can you give some advice for those startups, for those strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a big topic, and maybe I'll highlight a couple of handful of points. Some of them are very, very practical. I think there's a balance in framing why you want to work with a large company like J&J and stating it in terms of making it strategically relevant to the partner, but then also being really bold and clear about why you want to partner with a company like J&J or many of the other large companies that are represented here today. And really be clear beyond just capital. State what the strategic value would be, state what the opportunities are, the synergies that can be created together. The second thing I would highlight is be persistent. And again, I think that's a balancing of accepting when maybe the response is not as positive as you would have wanted, but to understand that sometimes a no can mean a no, not now, and recognizing that timing, especially when you're talking about companies that work, in cycles like J&J, can really affect the impact of, when the right time to partner is. So I'll just give an example, and I see that we're very soon running out of time. One of our most recent equity investments is in a company just a couple of miles south of here, in the smoking cessation space. It's a company called Kayak, and this was a relationship that was based on literally years of getting to know one another. And when I was first introduced to the CEO, it was before the technology had been de-risked, it was before they had their regulatory approvals, before they had had institutional funding. And so it just wasn't the right time for us to invest. I saw the potential, and I saw the strategic path to how it could get there. And I think what was really important was the founder and the CEO really listened, and over the course of those 2 years, developed a relationship with me, with the team that I worked with, and kept us up to date in a very friendly, informative way. And fast forwarding to the beginning of last year when we re-engaged, we had a sense of what had been de-risked, the regulatory hurdles that he had cleared, and ultimately the proposition and how it fit with J&J. So frame it in terms of the strategy that, with the partner that you're talking with, and be persistent and be bold.
Wow, these are all so insightful and valuable opinion. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Great.
So now we come to the end of this section, and I hope our audience members also could find this section being very, very helpful. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. It's a pleasure.